Section 6. We will get data from an API and display the details in our application. Using an API. First, we need somewhere to place this data, so let's add a tab view to our application. We'll add two tabs, one for our to-do list and one for our movies list. We can add a title attribute to give it some text. Now, let's cut and paste the stack layout we made for the to-do list and paste it inside the first tab view. Tab it over so it lines up properly. This is always a good idea to do when coding. In our new tab view, we have to have something inside, or it may crash, so for now we can just add another stack layout. Let's save and load our application. If you notice, tabs in Android are at the top, and tabs in iOS are at the bottom. This is one of the examples where components can appear quite different on different platforms. Since we are making another list, we can save some time by copy and pasting the content inside of our other tab view, the to-do list, and reuse some of it in our movies list. Copy and paste the list view inside the new stack layout. We will change the for attribute to say movie in movies, and the rest we can clear out. Let's add some new columns now, for our movie layout. Since each of these is for a movie, we can give it a class of movie. Now, let's add a spot for our image to go for the movie poster. Make an image tag, and we should align it to the top in case our movie description is longer than the image. Let's give it a class of movie image in case we want to style it later. The source here will be a view computed attribute, using : to generate the URL for the image. APIs you use will have documentation on their images. Some might even have the full URL in the data, but this source only had the subfolder and image name available, and you had to add the beginning of the URL yourself. In the second grid column number 1, since 0 is the first and default column, let's add a stack layout to contain all of your movie details and give a class of, you guessed it, movie details. Inside of this layout, we will add yet another grid layout so we can have a title on the left and a score on the right. We can give the score only a bit of room so they align properly and don't take up too much space. If we used the stack layout here instead of the grid layout, the score would take up half of the available space instead of 50 units of space we give it. Next, we can do a movie title and then a movie score label. The text of that will be movie.title, as well as the class. Since we don't know how long the movie titles are, we should give it a text wrap of true so the title can go to the second line if it needs to. Now, the vote score, which in the API is called vote_average. I gave it a class of movie score and also put it in column 1 of the grid layout. Let's close our title grid and move on to the description. Add a label under our closing grid layout tag. The text for this will be movie.overview as indicated by the API as a short description. Class can also be movie overview, and again, text wrap should be true, since the sentences we are dealing with could be any size. Now, let's add a button to get some more movie details. The text should say view movie or movie details, and the class can be view movie button. Make sure you close the stack layout. Now we need to add some code to get some movies listed. First, we need to add a new array to our data, called movies. Put a comma after the to-dos entry, and we can get rid of this comment for now. And now, make a movies array the same as the to-dos we already have. Now let's load some movies into that array. Let's add a load movies function that will get data from an API and place it in our array. Since we are getting something and using an HTTP request, we need to use the NativeScript HTTP module. This is not imported by default though, so we have to import it. Add the import line to the top of your scripts file. We can put it under the application settings we already imported. We can use the getJSON command of the HTTP module and place in our API's URL for the content we want, popular movies. Here is what the API sends to our application. Some elements we reference are title, vote average, poster path, and overview. Since this is a promise-based function, we can use then to place the results in our movies to do when it finishes getting some data. This.movies references our data array we created as shown here. And the content we want from the API is inside the results object, inside of the entire results. We can reference that using result.results. And in case there is an error, we can put it in the console so we know if there is something wrong. Let's add this function to the end of our created function. Let's test. Okay, it loaded everything, but there's no image. Let's see if we can figure out what's wrong. The first place you should check is your XML. I see I put a slash by accident. Let's fix and try again. Perfect. Now, let's make the button work. Add a tab function that passes the movie ID. This will open a web browser to the movies page. We need to now add the view movies function to our methods. Since we need to open an external application, we need a NativeScript module called utils for this. Let's import the utils module similar to the HTTP module. Return the URL using the ID for the movie. Let's save and test. Okay, the button works perfectly. Now let's add some style to clean up the layout a bit. In our style block, let's add some styles to the classes we added to the elements. We can give them some padding to space them out a bit, as well as bold the title and score. Also, I'm going to set the image dimensions to ensure they render properly. Okay, let's see how that turned out. Well, that looks much better. Much more spacing, and everything looks a little bit cleaner. We can color the score based on the minimum score we expect. Let's make it green or red depending on the score we want. First, add a red and green class to your styles. Now, let's add a function for generating the class based on the score. Add a new method that takes in the score, and if it's over 8, it will return green, otherwise red. Add this as a Vue.js process class using : to your score label. Pass the vote average to the function to give it a score to check against. Save and test. Awesome! Our app now shows the scores above 8 as green, so we can go see only the best ones.